YouTube channel. Now let me hand you over to our facilitator today, IACC CEO Mark Cooper, who will introduce you to our panellists. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Kate, and hello everybody. Welcome to IACC Shorts, the first IACC Shorts in 2021. And boy, it's great to see such a large audience. I know a number of you are still coming through. Kate mentioned that we will put you respectfully on mute this time, but we will be welcoming questions through the chat box. And although we'll ask you to keep your video off so that we can see our beautiful set of panelists in full Technicolor today, at the end, when we get to the Q&A, we'll welcome everybody who'd like to come and share a smile and wave at us. But today is a really important day. Today is the second part of IACC Short as we look to the future for reimagining food and beverage. For those of you who joined us last month, we focused on the refreshment break stations with the promise that we would bring back this exclusive group of food and beverage experts and venue operating experts from around the globe to tackle conference lunches. And where is that going? I'd also like to take this opportunity to say that we'll welcome both IACC members from Europe, the US, Australia and Asia. We also have some guests and friends of IACC who are joining us, so welcome. We hope you enjoy being a part of our community and the idea sharing today. I'm also excited to see that we have some meeting professionals that have joined us as well. And I'm really looking forward to your perspective, because as we'll be approaching some of the big questions as they relate to being operating venues and preparedness for those meetings as they come back, your view and perspective would be really valuable to add. So please use that chat box and Kate will be looking out for those sessions. Now, IACC represents the top 1% of business-focused venues around the world. We've got 400 properties operating in 26 countries today. To be the best in class, those venues design their future. They don't follow others. They don't wait to see what others do. They actually create what the solution is for the future. And this discussion is going to be all about that as we bring together those experts that you can see on screen from around the globe who have already gone through the process of welcoming back meetings in 2020, and a number are running meetings this week. So importantly, they're not going to be speaking theoretically, subjectively, and they're not going to be speaking based upon what they've read. They're going to be sharing what they've seen and what they've experienced by welcoming back conferences, training and meetings. And from these experiences, of course, solutions can be designed. And I thank the panel for just your willingness to be open and share these opportunities for the greater good of the industry. At the conclusion of this webinar, we have made a commitment to create 2 guides, one on refreshment breaks and one on reimagining conference lunches, where we'll bring together all of this content with visuals and with examples. So look out for that. That will be following this month, and hopefully will give you just another tool in your kit in preparing to reopen. And you'll also be able to share this session as you can with all the others on IACC YouTube channel. So, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to welcome our panel. First of all, I'd like to ask Sean Anderson, VP of Conferencing for Sodexo, to give us a big wave. Hello, Sean. And then I'd also like to welcome Jim Berman from the Chase Center, home of Joe Biden for the last few months, I know, in Delaware, USA. Hi, Jim, welcome. And next, Louise Hallquist from Sigtunahöjden outside of Sweden. Welcome. Louise is Executive Chef of Sigtunahöjden. Jakob Buss, General Manager and Director of Batahöj Conference Center and Hotel in Denmark. Welcome, Jakob. We have Tom Kupo, who is Director General of the Virginia Tech Conference Center in the US. Welcome, Tom. Jamian Lewis, who's coming all the way from London in the United Kingdom, represents CCT Venues, is Executive Chef of 3 conference centres in downtown London, United. 4. Gosh, the empire grows, Jamian. And so does that sense of responsibility that goes with it, I know. So welcome, Jamian. We're looking forward to your perspective. Brian Stapleton, Vice President of Food and Beverage for Aramark Conference Centres in the United States. Welcome, Brian. And for those of you who've joined IAC webinars in the past, he needs no introduction. He's been a big part of our session in the past. Murray Hall, Copper Skillet, competitor Copper Skillet winner, and a proponent of IAC's Meeting Room of the Future Food and Beverage Trends, joins us from the BMO Conference and Training Centre, part of Dolce Hotels and Resorts in Canada. Welcome, Murray.
Yeah, good day, everybody.
And last but not least, you can't see him on screen. He's dialing in from somewhere in the United States. We have Patrick Burwald, VP of Food and Beverage for Benchmark Hospitality, a global hospitality company. Welcome, Patrick. We're glad you could join us as well.
Thanks, Mark. Hello, everybody.
And I'm hoping there that I have missed absolutely nobody. I think we are good today. So to kick us off today, some of the burning questions that we've been hearing from our members, certainly in the last few weeks, have been, what changes should we consider in the service styles as we reopen our properties? How are capacities going to be affected? And how are we going to manage these capacity changes? Creative ideas, of course, around food service. Have they got to be centralized, these solutions? Are we decentralizing? Are locations something that we need to be thinking of differently? We're going to be exploring the great outdoors more, just as we have been in our private lives now, forced, but actually enjoying that a lot. And the impact of changes to the environment. What are they? Do they matter? And last but not least, our members are telling us, they want to know a little bit more about food information sharing. So there's some of the questions that our members are raising, but what's more important is what you guys think at our panel. And I'm going to just open it up to any of you who want to start us off and start the discussion going.
Well, to begin with, it's really important to get as much information from our clients to begin in the beginning. What are their dietary requirements? What are their expectations? What are their thoughts and how are they feeling? As we've gathered from previous discussions, some groups like to be left alone and like to be completely isolated. So we need to provide catering that suits their needs. And some are quite happy to almost use a shared environment, but within time slots. So it's finding out what our clients need, what they want from inquiry stage, and then providing something to match what their expectations are. The other thing is that during this difficult time is we need to provide reassurance to all our clients and customers to let them know that we've made changes and we're taking every step that we can possible to reduce the risk of transmitting the virus. We regularly sanitize our catering areas and workstations. We individually portion and we pre-pack as much in advance to just make their experience more comfortable and to let them feel safe.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that, one of the interesting things we've seen in our world is that there actually are quite a lot of inquiries around, having meetings and having events. I think the interesting thing is it gets back to the whole sales process of understanding, as you noted, what's available, what information do we need to be more successful and keep everybody safe, have a Yeah, I think people take it very, very seriously. What we found is other people have not necessarily taken it serious. So I think the questions during the sales process need to be asked about exactly, what the expectations are, what the requirements are, and get a sense of what the meeting planner is actually looking for. I think it's really important in that area.
And the expectation keeps on changing at the moment. expectations are not the same today as they were 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. They change all the time.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it happens after the Christmas break, at least in the U.S. I mean, that anticipation of the surges, et cetera. I think it's going to be interesting. But as I said before,
one of the points that I think I hear that that Brian's making is that as well as the need to gather information, is there other information that we need to be giving at the sales stage that we wouldn't ordinarily want to do? Louise?
Yes, we at Sigtunahöjden has actually made a small program for the guests that we send out when they ask us if we can fix a conference for them or anything. We just send them a manual of what we think and what questions we want answers for, and what work we have done around COVID, which means that they get like a set manual. Do this, do this, do this, and we can do it together. What do you want? Can we make this for you? And what we are thinking. So they get it all from the beginning, and it has been really good. They are really pleased with that.
I think it's a great point, Mark. Jamian and Louise bring up about getting that information early. It sounds so simplistic, and I think in this industry, we spend a lot of time and effort on good, solid communication, right? So this shouldn't be a surprise. But you had said at the outset here that we've got a lot of meeting planners, professional meeting planners. I'd like to hear, honestly, in the chat box, if they have some specifics, because I think what the group here is saying is there's a recognition that we need to change that communication very early, because all of the buyers and all of the suppliers are coming from a different perspective. If you're in Europe, there are different rules across different countries. In the United States, there's different rules across different counties. So I think we have to, as the operators, assume nothing when we're talking with people in the outset. And I think that's everybody's point here, is we need to really strip down what that conversation is and start it at the beginning, and don't pretend like we can lean on the information that we used to glean in the past. It's very, very different. We're talking about expectations around health and safety and food service and timing and expectations, what they can see on site. Is so very different. That to have some sort of a playbook that you can use when you're having those conversations is helpful, and to get feedback directly from the planners. What do they need to know? What do they need to understand that we need to share very early in that process, so there are no surprises when customers actually walk through the door?
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark. John, I think it's important that, as you know, county to county and month to month, things change. And I think from a sales perspective, you've got to make sure when you're going through the sales part of the process, making sure you identify questions to ask, and also create that open-ended word. Who knows what's going to be, if there's another surge during the time that they're going to have the meeting, et cetera. I think those are all questions and answers that need to be discussed during the sales process.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody else has specific sales process thoughts, but I'll tell you, for me, that plays all the way through when the guests do arrive. So the planning process and starting early, absolutely critical. But I think too, I don't want to miss an opportunity. So that communication is largely going to be with the sponsor, the meeting professional that's coordinating all the details. That doesn't mean all of those bits of information are going to be known by the customers when they walk through the door. So I would encourage everybody. I think probably most venues have some sort of a meet and greet process that they've got set up with their groups on day one, or that sort of thing. I would encourage everybody to write a script and to take the first couple of minutes of the meeting, and for somebody who represents the venue to get in front of those customers all at the same time and kind of set the expectations. It's going to be a different landscape, but talk to them about what welcome to the venue, tell them where things are specifically so people don't have to wander. So hopefully that alleviates people kind of wandering through the building and makes it a little bit more safe. Set up timing expectations. Your lunch is going to be at this time. Here's when we're going to do your break. And you may have seen when we walk through the door, for example, here are our expectations for masks. That's dictated to us by the local health department. And in all candor, we don't want to play the policeman for those masks. We want to be transparent with you why those rules exist and where we get them from. And what we try to do is build rapport with those attendees right out of the gate so that they understand. Again, I'd love to hear some planner feedback, but more than ever, it sounds It sounds so simplistic, but more than ever, it's a partnership. Because the real risk, if we can't get that communication to people up front and get everybody on the same page, the real risk is, the health department is just going to watch what's happening and get uncomfortable, and they're going to stop letting us have the events for a period of time. So if we can get the attendees to play along with us, understand the expectations, I think your point about the early communication and the sales process, spot on. And I think it translates all the way through to day one of the event.
Is there anyone else within the panel that have experience of the groups that returned, their expectations differing and you having to react to those?
Yeah, I think most importantly is customization, being flexible. Different groups have multiple protocols, whether it's buffet or a la carte, and it's, some could require multiple servers, and possibly some of the groups self-serve. They want to self-serve. We do see buffets for sure, and we seem to be leaning towards private breaks, hopefully multiple private breaks. But until confidence in returns, we think that it's going to be mostly separate meetings and private groups.
Mark, this is Patrick. Just to add to what Tom said on the benchmark side, we fully recognize that this is all driven by guest perception, and that changes with every market and demographic, and obviously regulations that are put out at the local state level. But from our perspective, it's important and critical to have our own base level set of standards, if we will, that we operate by, to keep our own team in check and accountable. But obviously we flex and we are nimble based on the needs of the customer.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, back to my hotel days when, it was, everybody had a private break. I mean, the conference center world, it's kind of universal, but I think if you get back into the old style hotel model, everybody had their personal break, and there was no cross utilization. And so I think that's something that's been done in the industry for many, many years. And it's just a change in the way we operate. It's a change in opportunity to change to current status, and then hopefully we can get back to normal state going down the path. But I think the other thing that's interesting from a chef's perspective, having been a chef for 30 years, the menuing piece and developing the menus, I think, are important, because if you have a menu that you've developed under a certain style of service, and then there's a surge or something, you've got to change that style of service. How easy is it to change, to reimagine that menu into a different style of service? So if you had a dine-in, you had a buffet set, or you decided you want to do some type of, staff served buffet, and it went into some, decided they wanted to do something that was sit down, maybe it changed, how could you change that food? Not necessarily changing the food, but actually just reinventing the item to be served on a different format. So I think menu is an important piece.
And can anyone talk about how easy that is in liaising with your sales teams who are coming up with these various different service requests from customers that have a different level of confidence with different service styles, and you have a trademark approach to food and beverage? How are you dealing with these different requests?
If we are writing a menu, we write it as this is the vegetables, like 2 or 3 different vegetables, and this is the cream, and this is the protein. And then after that, we don't say it's gonna be in this size or in this. So it's quite easy to go from plating it to a buffet if the numbers increase, or if the group says they want it. So we don't write all the details in the menu at Sigtunahöjden, at least.
Yeah, I think the key is to be as adaptable as possible in order to suit your client's needs. I agree with you, Louise. You have a dish that could be suitable to be served buffet style, or it's also suitable to be served plated. Also, in-room catering is a big thing. for us as well. We do that quite a bit, and it's received really well by all of our clients. Yeah, it's just being adaptable and having different options, and being able to look after our guests as best as we can.
Does the common theme, I just want to, I'll ask a question this time, because just listening to what people are saying, is there like is like the bubble concept kind of a common theme everybody is seeing? So what I hear is, whether you have a base service style or not, or however you approach it, it seems like you're customizing to every single group. Is everybody seeing that bubble concept is really what you need somehow? And what is that? Because I know we are seeing that, but I'm just curious.
Going forward, we will see even more of the bubble concept. I think that's a great concept. The idea of, like what Jakub, we were talking about last week, where you have almost have your own private chef. I think that would be a great selling point to some of our clients going forward, especially for larger groups. They'll be in one area, or their catering will be in one area. We'll have a little pop-up kind of kitchen almost, depending on the facilities you have in the different venues that we have across the globe. But I think this will be very well received, and it's definitely something that we could do going forward.
Well, the bubbles are certainly here to stay, and what we are experiencing at the moment are that everything has to be separated. All meals in different rooms. They need to have their own restrooms, their own meeting rooms, their own refreshment areas. We even try to have them staying when they're staying here overnight, having room in the same hall. So the bubble is certainly here to stay. We had a discussion last week about how long is this gonna take, and we don't know, but at least for the next 6 to 8 to, well, we don't know, but for almost at least 6 to 12 months from now on, we will do almost only bubbles here.
So what we have done to keep the bubble for the guests, because we don't have toilets for everyone to have like one separate per group, we are cleaning the rooms and letting the guests have the room straight on in the morning, so they have their own restroom for the whole day. They can go outside and into their room and then go back into their bubble, and not spending any time with anyone else or using a restroom with anyone else.
I think that presents another challenge, though, for smaller venues and other establishments that don't have the facility to provide that. How do we combat that? How do we provide safe space and meeting rooms and catering and refreshment for clients in venues that don't have the facilities to provide an isolated bubble in one particular area for all their clients?
I think that's an excellent point, Jamian, because so many IACC venues and so many specialist meeting event venues have built a business on the centralized restaurant lunch offer. And so all this conversation about bubbles and individual approaches and different service styles just makes me ask the question, is the restaurant concept dead? Is it gone? And if our business mix in the past was 80% of our conference delegates went to our main restaurant for lunch, 20% we looked at other styles in other areas, what's that business mix going to look like in the future? It's an incredibly important point.
I don't think the restaurant concept is gone, Mark. I think it's going to be delayed. If we want to look at it from that standpoint, it's going to be postponed. We could still utilize a restaurant in some sort of capacity. We were looking at even at our own building, and other IACC venues have different buildings. All our venues are very unique. So what would work for one is not necessarily going to work for the other. But we can look at our room, our dining room, and say we can break it up into three different pieces. But then our capacity for that room would still limit us how many people we could get in there, even if they were in their own bubble. So going back to what Jakub was saying, if you have opportunity to move people around the building, that's going to be probably one of the key things to achieve that. But then also what you're alluding to as well was, if you're looking at our conference center venues, exactly 80% buffet, 90% buffet at my place would just go through. We would do 400 people, 500 people through buffets for lunch, no problems at all. So those numbers are definitely going to go away. So we're now turning our model to saying, what can we do cost effective, still giving a good variety? So we're going to look at the table d'hôte a la carte options that we can deliver. And then if someone wants a private buffet, if they want to have a box lunch, if they want to have a served buffet, if they'd like to have bento boxes, something else, then that would be the additional charge versus it being the other way around. So you're still going to have a great a la carte experience. It's going to be separated. You're going to have your own table, your own area, your own bubble. But if you need to have a buffet for whatever reason, we can do it. We'll serve it for you. But I think that's where we can probably look at the additional charges and say, okay, you want this, it's going to cost you more in labor. And I think we spoke about that last week with Sean, and it was a great idea that we're going to be pursuing as well on this end.
Murray, can I ask you, we've got a question coming from Capella in the Netherlands in terms of managing larger groups. How are you going about doing that when you do have the bigger groups in?
When we're looking at the bigger groups, and I'll be honest with everybody, I'm not seeing that happening for at least this year. We're going to have to look at, we can handle the larger space areas, but for any large groups in our size of facility, with our capacity limits and whatever government, federal limits are going to be in place, it's going to be challenging. There's no way, I don't see myself doing 400 people through a buffet anytime soon. I see us probably getting up to the hundreds, getting up maybe to a couple of hundred, which we can easily do in our facility. But if 6 foot distancing is still between guests, if you still have table requirements, if we're still in that bubble zone, I know personally from my building, we're going to have a challenge. Other properties may have more space. I know the Chase Center's probably got tons of space. You guys can probably pull that off a little bit better, Jim. But from my building, it would pose some issues that we would definitely have to work through.
With the larger groups, it's imperative that the organizer works with the venue, with the event planner, with the organizer. Both need to work together and liaise with the chef and F&B to make sure that they know the importance of space and timing. It's not impossible. Like Murray says, we're not going to be doing the 400s anymore and the big groups of 300, but we need to look at the restaurant layout, space tables, so there's at least a meter plus spacing between each client. Look at timings, floor, everything from the entrance, the whole journey. So when they come into the restaurant, what we do, for example, is we have footprints at 1 meter spaces on the entrance to the restaurant, hand sanitization on entrance, so people again feel reassured, and it's what we should be doing anyway. And then strict timings, that's so important, so groups don't clash, so then everybody can come in and get their food safely and then sit down in an area, and then once they've all left, and then we can then go in clear and keep it as safe as possible. But those are 2 important things. Space and timings are really important.
Yeah, I agree with you with timing.
And I think that we should encourage everyone to utilize outdoor space as much as possible, because at the end of the day, you know, your covers and your average check is key. And when we're talking about 50% capacity in restaurants and meeting rooms and things like that, as much space as available we need to be using.
Yeah, and I can weigh in a little bit on some of the large. Jakob, were you going to say something?
No, yeah, I'm just saying that F&B have always been world champions in logistics, and this is certainly taken to another level. I know that, but most of the issues that we have at the moment, we have done before, not in this scale, but we have done this before. We are specialists. This is in our DNA.
Yeah, we are the change makers.
Totally.
We are change makers.
Yeah, I'll weigh in a little bit on that question about just larger events too, because I think we want to be just mindful. Everything that everybody's offering up here is 100% true. It's also true that inconsistency that we talked about at the beginning exists. There are venues that still have approval for up to 250 people. I don't know, Jim, if you want to weigh in on any of that, but so tactically, what are you seeing to be able to accommodate that? Yeah, you're seeing buffets, you are seeing, do you want to offer, just throw a whole bunch of ideas against the wall. There are PPE vending machines. If people feel more comfortable with gloves and a mask, you could put those in front of people. Sanitizer stations where that is. Line markers and things so that people don't congregate when they queue up. calling people up by table, designing your buffet such that there's a barrier. This is not a foodborne problem. This is a people problem, and communicable disease sort of a thing across hands and coughing and sneezing and those sorts of things. So protect your food. Some of that food will need to be prepared to expedite the process, but you can still customize some of it. But to put those barriers in place, you can do some of the larger scale events indoors. Those are just some of the steps you have. I don't know if anybody has any other because we got that specific question. There must be people out there who are entertaining some larger events, indoors or outdoors. So I don't know if there's other experience and ideas that we want to share for that answer.
I could. I was just going to. I'm sorry. I was just fishtail off of what Jakob said, that it is in our DNA to kind of think on our toes and be as flexible as possible. And yes, capitalizing on all the space that you have in the operation. We could have multiple events going on. Our meeting capacity can be 50 people, but that doesn't mean you're not serving 200 people that day. It's just in different locations and using all the geography that's available. One might be that personal chef element in one area, one might be a served buffet, one might be a bento box. And again, it's just using that flexibility to really meet, client objectives and making sure that we're serving exactly what they want and doing it to the best possible level, and accepting the fact that, this isn't, we're not in crisis response right now. We are in kind of a new norm. And I think that the faster we can get to that mindset that, an event for 50 does mean that you have footprints on the ground and space people out. It does mean that you have served buffets. It does mean that you have separate entrances even. In a large facility like our own, we have entrances that wouldn't necessarily be used on the regular, but now they are. And I think, again, exactly what Jakob said, we have always been kind of the masters of logistics in that when something pops up, we've got to run with it. How many times have you done an event that went off at exactly the time that it was scheduled? Never. We just do it as part of second nature. How many times have you had a last minute, hey, we have 50 extra people or 20 extra people? All right, well, we roll with it. And I think that is just part of our new norm.
I think that goes back to your question too about, when you started, Mark, asking about our, how did you ask the question? Our kind of the centralized restaurant, is that concept dead? What I'm hearing across the board is everybody's coming up with these new inventions on how to take lunch to the people instead of bringing the people to your lunch. And then on the back side of that, having the creativity to say, well, now, wait a second. I had this room that had 80% utilization for meal periods, right? And now that room, maybe I could repurpose that space. Think about how close. Do your dining rooms have some open windows, or they have some different look and feel to them, so that at least temporarily it can become a different type of a meeting room that you would put into inventory that you never had before? I think there's a lot of creativity there.
Well, the other point that I make is I'm hearing lots of mid to long term projections in regards to how long this is going to be in place for, and maybe, just maybe, last year we were thinking of everything in that window of it might only need to be done for the next 6 months and then we all get back to normal, right? I'm not hearing that from this panel. I'm hearing get ready for the next year, get ready for the next 18 months. And if it's going to be that far out, then we have to change our service offer and make sure it is absolutely robust to take us through the next 18 months. The other question I was going to ask is that when you asked a question of larger groups, I know, Tom, at your property, you've been looking after professional US football teams, and I'm guessing they're larger groups and operating in their own bubbles. Are you seeing differences between, the way they want to manage their food and beverage that we can share with this group to prepare us for the larger groups?
Yeah, so it's college football, college basketball, rather large groups. Some of the football teams were 130, 140. And the thing that they had in common was the bubble. Absolutely. They all had that in common. Some of them required multiple servers at each station, serving the players and the staff. And some required that their servers, that there was self-service, that their players and team members were all serving each other. So those were the big difference. But the common thread was they were in the bubble. and they remained in the bubble, and that was important to them. In fact, we had one large group that did not want anyone in the room except for their players. Once meals were set, buffet was set, they didn't want anyone in the room for the entire time. In fact, they cleaned off their own plates. They wanted an area that they could put their plates and silverware on when they were finished, and they kept everyone out of the room the entire time. So it's back to the bubble concept. That's what we saw.
That may even be linked in the future, or more relevant in the future, as pre-event testing comes into play. So if we have a group of 20 executives from General Electric coming to our property, and they've all had their 15-minute pre-testing and they know they're clear, again, as a bubble, they're actually, that appetite to look after each other and be completely open with each other is something that we haven't heard a lot of. It's always been the staff attendee relationship as opposed to the inter-attendee relationship. Possibly we'll see more of that, fueled for different reasons.
Yeah, Tom, we've seen the same thing where groups are added. They are like, just bring the food in, put it in, and then everybody leave the room. The other thing that we've done is we've changed some people's titles around, and we've actually put the title of concierge, kind of a meeting concierge into the mix, and trying to create that sense of service, that sense of attentiveness, and also it creates an opportunity. Once the relationships develop, it creates an opportunity for that person to manipulate the activity of the group, whether it's making sure they go down the right hallway the right way, those types of things, or if they're running late, or if they need to make a change. I think there's just another open line of communication from the client to the operating team. So it's kind of a play on words. We didn't add staff to it. We just changed a couple of people's titles, and we just did some additional training, but it seemed to pay off.
So private concierge, private chefs, I'm hearing in this conversation, it's all getting very Swiss chalet ski holiday-esque, isn't it?
You paint a pretty picture. I want to go to this meeting. It sounds great.
Panel, there's a question that's come in from Simon at Why Boston Lakes in the UK. Bearing in mind, looking at all these different areas like private chefs, private areas, are you charging for those extra sort of services?
Yes. I'll offer up 2 cents here, just as a lesson learned from. Well, you know what? I'll wait, because we tried a couple of things and actually made a mistake that I'm glad to share with everybody. But I'll hold that till later. Anybody else has the experience with what they're doing in pricing?
From our side, when it comes to pricing, we've looked at 2 options. We've looked at the option of just we've had to increase our prices a little bit, but we've just left it as a set CMP, DMP price, or actually, not CMP, but DMP pricing. So we've left our DMP pricing alone. What we want to do is let's get the customer back to the building. Let's get them confident coming back into a meeting space. Let's show them what we can do as an organization that makes them feel safe, makes them feel they're ready to go. We are with them together. We're not going to gouge them. We're not going to charge them. We want you in the building. We appreciate your business. We're not going to go after the money. But maybe in a year from now, when we're rebooking, then if some of the stuff is still coming up, then we would definitely have to look at some sort of increase going forward, whether it be staffing, whether it be extra packaging costs, however that gets layered into it. But we're definitely looking at that still at all-in-one DMP, CMP cost, and not really kind of siphoning it out into different sort of buckets of charges or taxes or something like that. But right now it's just get the customer in, get them feel safe, and start building a rapport back with the customer.
Can I offer a counter to that, Murray? I was brought up in a farming community, so if you ever charged £1 for something, whenever it was in the future, if you charged £1.10, it was never acceptable. It was always bad value. So, you know, waiting, because we're making these changes now to just get the business flowing, is that the right thing? Because what I'm hearing is, you know, the difference between a bento box service style and a exclusive chef, or, you know, staff that are dedicated to you. For me, that's an elevated experience. That's a premium. So really, should we wait for 6 months to a year, or is now our moment to be offering a wider selection and charging for that enhanced service? What do others think?
Mark, this is Patrick with Benchmark. Just to add to what Marie was saying, our approach is obviously to recognize there's an innate real cost for additional equipment that we're buying to meet certain standards, expectations. There's enhanced cleaning protocols. There's additional labor to suit specific scenarios. At the end of the day, we're a business. We need to do the job of calculating the delta on what we need to capture from a revenue standpoint to make sure we're left whole. But the finding has been that we do not want to come off as nickel and diming the customer through surcharges or line items, but creatively and artfully build those costs into menu pricing. But to your point, we still have to have a value proposition. If we're going to charge a higher price, there has to be, of course, the elevated quality, but the value of the product met, of course, by the service. I look at one of our restaurants that we have in Santa Cruz, reduced hours of operation, reduced menu, modified service. Unfortunately, this hotel actually just came out of a renovation and then went right into COVID. So the challenge we see there is that you have an environment where the guest that's been going to that property sees a new physical product, but sees an altered service style offering less service. Then they start to associate that with the new norm for your property. And then we start to see a pullback from capture and loyalty. And that's what's the concern. We want to make sure that we are holding up our end of the bargain, because this is not a conversation over the next 6 months to a year. This is long-term, multi-year. We need to protect the value and the continuity of our brand and what our value proposition is.
But I think we are not able to calculate on everything at the moment. We have to have the courage to do a lot of things, running that extra mile, and in a lot of terms, not knowing what are the real costs of this. We're taking some chances at the moment just to stay alive. This is short-term strategy, I know that, but yes, we will create relations and rely on that relations are paying off in the future.
Yeah, well, that's where our sales team, that's where our event planners are coming into play. They've got those relationships, right? We know that we've had these customers for years, so we need to take care of those customers, make sure they keep coming back, as what Patrick said, for the years to come, right? And yeah, trust me, it's tight. It's one day I'm paying 10 cents for a paper cup, the next day I'm paying 25 cents. It's all based on supply and demand right now. So the prices are going, the models are fluctuating. We are working with reductions of hours, reductions of stuff that we're putting out, but we're still delivering a fantastic product. And we need to build that customer loyalty back into the building. And it's a short-term thing, but hopefully it works into a long-term gain where that customer is going to keep coming back to your building, because their budgets are probably chopped in half right now too. One of our customers we were dealing with for years had their travel and entertainment budget cut to zero. So how are they going to meet with us now? And are they going to come meet with us? So we're going to charge you a 20% premium on what you had before. So we're working with them to see if we can even get small meetings back in the building, get small events happening, because we're not the only ones that are hurting. The industry as well too is also hurting with restrictions on their own expenses. So it's going to be those personal touches, those sales connections, chef connections of who we have dealt with in the past as well too, that's going to bring those customers back to our buildings.
There's lots of merit on either side. There's lots of personal emotions that affect one way or the other. I can see the differences of this panel. So this is, of course, a perfect audience emoji opportunity for our audience to tell us what they think. So we have restrictive emojis with Zoom. Can everybody either, if you feel it's the right time to charge a premium for our premium service, give it a thumbs up on the emoji. And if you feel that it's just a bit too early, but we want to get there in the future, then we can use the cryy face. But anyone who has got the access to the Zoom reactions on your bar, please share away, and we will hopefully just get a little bit of a view from you all. Can people see those?
While you do that, Mark, I can share some actual experience as we went through and as we're going through this that we learned from, if this is something some people can take away who are attending this call. So early on, so across our portfolio, we've got the largest of large venues, indoor, outdoor, the smallest of boutique venues, and all around the world. And so the first assumption here that you have to make is not all of that was dark simultaneously, right? So there were some of these venues operating in some capacities. And so it was a great opportunity for lessons learned. And we go back all the way to late last spring with some of these efforts that we made and really learned where to hone in on that customer loyalty that we're talking about. So we started with, in a lot of the venues, a COVID surcharge, with the thinking that people will understand if I can draw a straight line from why is this on my bill to how much it costs, there would be an understanding. I'll come clean. The overwhelming response on that was not good. So we had to back off all of that. It was, I mean, we got almost across the board 90% negative feedback, because it did, in people's mind, even though we felt we could point a very straight line to why we were doing it, people's perception was that nickel and diming thing. And I can tell you in full disclosure, it wasn't a matter of, well, let's just figure out what this is generally and round it up. We went to the effort of to try to figure out what it really would cost and tack that on, and still the response just wasn't great. And so instead, we found we didn't have to back down on prior pricing. It was well enough received that we could stick to prior pricing. People understood that, and just fold in a small increase across the board. If it's maybe 3% or something, that if you break down the cost of the PPE and the chemicals across your entire number of guest attendees, it ends up being a small amount. That was a lot better received. People they could understand why there would be a little bit of an increase, and they were very receptive. And then as we talked about some of these other service styles that we had to, so whatever your go-to style is, that's what you're pricing for. As we deviated for that, for some of these niceties and these private pieces that you're talking about, Mark, it was a discussion about a staffing surcharge. That to do that and deliver it well, it's, we need to bring a chef attendant in the room or particular equipment or anything. And those conversations go well also. It's that partnership and the discussion. Some, frankly, were willing to trade off some other pieces so that they didn't see a dramatic increase, but everybody was receptive. Nobody got turned off by the dialogue.
Interesting. Any thoughts on the panels on that one approach that Sean's talked about, which seems more easily received and accepted by the client, charging for staff?
Yeah, I think we've incorporated the increase our costs. We haven't, we're cognizant of the, what Murray was talking about, the long-term effect of our relationship development here. So there has been, additional costs built into the overall pricing. To your point, Sean, it wasn't called out. But the reality is there is an increase in operating model. I mean, just get back to something as simple as gloves. I mean, gloves pricing is this year will go up, 60%. So, I mean, there are, supply and demand issues. Aluminum is going to be an issue. You're not going to be able to find aluminum. So plastic is going to continue to go up in price. So I think there's things that are known to us, since we're dealing with it on a daily basis, that perhaps isn't known to the guest, but there are real costs. And I think there's real decisions that have to be made around, are we going to address those costs today? Or are we going to, work for, the greater good, which I think everybody at this point on this panel going forward, everybody's working for the greater good, which is really great.
Yeah, I agree. I know budgets are being cut everywhere. People don't have that money to spend as they did before. However, we have to expect that there's going to be a price increase in everything. I mean, for example, completely off the board, my barber where I get my haircut, he's charged an extra £5 because they've had to outlay for all the PPE that they use. I mean, it's across the board, not just in our environment, but everywhere you'll see price increases. And I think people will understand that, but it's how we approach that and how we go about implementing those extra added costs. You know, that's the key thing. And I think if we're true to our product and we know we offer value and we can give them something a little extra, and they can see where their extra money is being spent, I think it will be well accepted and understood.
There's lots of discussion here about cost to the business. What about cost to the environment? Is that no longer an issue? Brian talks about lack of plastics and the increasing cost of plastic because we're using more. Masks are going up because we're using more. Is the environment important still, or is that really something we kick down the road?
Well, obviously, yeah, the environment is extremely important still. This whole pandemic has had a huge impact on the environment with the increasing use of plastics, the disposable masks that are being thrown away. You see them in the street, you see them all over the place. It's a real shame because as an industry, you all know we've made huge changes to try and reduce the amount of plastic. Certainly for us, we take our CSR, our corporate social responsibility, very important. It's very important to us, and we've made huge changes, and we had quite a lot of plans in place for 2020 and 2021 to reduce things even further. And then now with this pandemic, we're having to pre-package items, food items, and keep things separate. One thing Murray talked about last week was the juice bottles. He had juice dispensers, and then now he's had to revert back to using plastic bottles. There are some things that we can do to combat that. For example, when we do our a la carte dining, our Barbican venue, we use biodegradable paper sleeves for our cutlery, and these are made from recycled materials. But that's just one small step. It's just one thing that we can do. You know, reducing the use of plastic straws and everything. And it's almost like, as an industry, I feel for a short period of time, we may go backwards before we can begin to go forwards in that area. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jamie. The same thing. We're stepping back a little bit. If we can continue to go out with the compostable, the renewable, recyclable items, and make sure that that is clearly stated on the products we're putting out. One of the cutlery packages we use is compostable cutlery made with cornstarch, heat tempered, so the customer knows exactly what it is. So they know it's not a plastic fork. It can go into the compostable bin, and that's where we wind up putting it. And then we make sure we have clear defining recycling streams for the groups that are in, so they can recycle as well, or our team will take care of that. But I agree with you, Jamie. We're going 2 steps back to go 1 step forward, and that's just the way it's going to be for the next little while until we kind of cross out of this and go back into you know, our regular ceramic china and stainless steel cutlery and all that kind of stuff.
So important to communicate that this is temporary and this is necessary at the moment, and we do not like it. And as soon as possible, we will get back to the whole sustainable focus as soon as possible.
Agree 100% with you, Jakob. We do not like it. It is only temporary. We need to let our clients know this as well, and this is our thoughts. We're not doing this out of our own choice or because we want to. We're doing this because sadly it's a necessity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jakob, Jamian's daughter Chloe has gone off screen at the moment, so you can share your hashtag.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. No, to communicate that this is temporary and we do not like it. We have on our small coffee stations, we have a small note saying #ShittyVirus and explaining this is not normal. As soon as possible, all the plastic bottles, we'll get rid of it as soon as possible. But #ShittyVirus.
We like that. Thumbs up. #ShittyVirus.
Great messaging. all, we're coming up to the hour. We have 2 minutes left, so I would like to just pause for a moment to ask Kate, have we got any other questions that have come in from our attendees? And by all means, if you haven't put in the chat yet and you want to come on screen and do so, we will allow you to come on and speak in person. But have we got any questions for the panel?
So we've had a number, I think, have been answered. One lady's come in and asked, have we got any innovative ideas about packaging for lunches? Okay.
A lot of the stuff we're using now is still the compostable, recyclable items. That's really where we are now on that. Hopefully we can get down the road, is what Jakob was saying. We go down the road and we're back to our regular, maybe a reusable sort of bento box kind of scenario that we can reuse again. But right now it's still compostable, paper as much as possible, and then we try to reduce as much plastic as we can.
And this group, as well as what Murray said, this group covered a lot of ground with that on the December webinar. And I know the guide that we've nearly completed, we're about a week away from getting that to everybody, has got lots of examples of the different presentations and the materials, but all of it links up to, we want our presentation to be stronger. We want to be in control of our presentation of those units and those boxes and the bento boxes and the individual servings. So definitely watch this space. There'll be more coming in there. Well, if there are there any other questions, Kate, from our audience?
No, that's us, Mark.
Okay, well, what an incredible discussion. You have so much knowledge to share. You've done that openly, lots of great ideas. I can't thank you enough. But if I'm going to summarize in terms of a few words from what you've said, one is, as we hit the hour mark perfectly, advance information. It's all about advance information and flow between both parties. The restaurant's not dead, but the restaurant has become multiple offers now, and with multiple bubbles in, and the expansion of other parts of the venues to be able to cater to those bubbles is absolutely key. So we have to look at those spaces and the ability to broaden our footprint even more than we maybe did in 2020. Financial viability is massive, but we've got to get the balance right. We don't want to be seen to be a greedy partner when we welcome our customers back. We have to position it right and go after the right justifications for those different tiers of service or food types that we have. And last but not least, we are all adapting and adopting #ShittyVirus, because none of us want to be seeing the stuff that we're putting out that isn't good for the environment, isn't going to help us with our social footprint, because we know the DNA of the IACC venues around the world is is very different from some of those short-term measures that we're putting in place. For all of our panel, Jim, Louise, Jakob, Brian, Sean, Tom, Murray, Jamian, and Patrick, of course, who've been with us. Thank you so much for your time and energy and passion today. Thank you to everyone who's joined us from as an attendee. We will share this with you. Join us for other webinars. We run at least 3 per month. We have an IACC Green Star environmental program running in just a couple of weeks' time. And we hope that this has given you some great food for thought for the recovery of your own properties, and look forward to seeing you at another IACC event. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.